Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for watching and thanks for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you can get notified when I put some more videos out. Today I wanted to go through my current live preset. I say current, I emphasize that because it's always changing. I just came back from a sound check. So this is my, I guess, high gain patch. I'm going to work on some other low to mid gain patches here soon. But for right now, this is what I'm using and I was using with my previous band. But first, what I want to cover before I start playing through the different scenes is, and obviously I'm sharing this preset in the description, a couple things. I've got a Gibson Les Paul, that's my main guitar. I've got a couple other ones I've used, but for the most part, I use this as Burstbucker Pro pickups in it. These are the stock ones that come in the standard. So you're going to hear, when you hear the preset and you load it up, you're going to hear it might be a little darker than you're used to. If you're dialing in your patches for live use, you can be shocked when you go to play them live because you'll dial them in at maybe a lower volume at home, and then you turn everything up, and now all these lows and these highs start coming in, and that's just there's a name for it, and it's the Fletcher Munson guy. So Fletcher Munson curve, and you can read up on that. But anyway, those lows and those highs are always there, but when you turn things up, the frequencies start to come through. So you can dial them up lower volumes if you want, but be prepared to tame some of that stuff down, lower the presence a little bit, treble. On this particular amp, which is a Friedman, I typically have to go and adjust the depth a little bit to not get too boomy. And we use in-ears for this venue, so in the in-ears it tends to be a little darker, but we also have these P16s, which is a personal mixer by Behringer. And it's got a 3-band EQ, so I can use that and I can kind of tweak things as well. Just don't go grab the preset and start going away, because it's really good to kind of understand how I dial these in to help you out to dial in your own, because they're definitely going to sound different on a different PA, on a different guitar, and a different player. When I first dial in a preset, I generally just start with the basics. I start with an amp that I'm familiar with, and then I grab a cabinet and I go through those cabinets. But even the amp, I find one that I understand and maybe I've played in real life. For years I've played through a Bogner Ecstasy 101B. That would be the most logical choice for me to grab and start dialing up. But I just wanted something different. But I've also played through the Friedman BE100. My friend's got one and I've used it live, and it's pretty fantastic amp. For my cab selection, typical go-to for me is a 57-121 combo, whether it be greenbacks or vintage 30s, depends on what amp I'm using it with. In this case, I've got an IR, a custom IR from York Audio. It's from the bipolar cab pack. This one in particular is the Recto 412 Mix 4. Someone would have to tell me. It sounds to me that it may be a 57-121, but I swear that I heard he actually responded and said what it was, and it wasn't that. So maybe he can chime in on the comments and kind of say what that Mix 4 is. But either way, I really like it, and I probably stole it from Leon Todd because he had this same pack. What I've done is I've added just a small amount of reverb with a very slight mix here, very fast time. And it's the studio reverb, just to kind of give a little bit in the in-ears, not too much to where it translates to front of house. I don't want to do that. I've also went over to the room and put it back to 50% because I had kind of messed around with this. Room size stays default. Everything from, I forgot what firmware it was, if it was 3 or one of those that added the floor reflections, and they default to 50% for new patches. And then the room level, what I do is like I said, I don't want things to translate into front of house too much. So I want to create a little bit of space in my ears so it's not so dry and dead. And I don't want too much of the reverb. So I'll come in here and just play with that. Depends on what your in-ears are. Mine are custom molds, and so things are very isolated. So you might have some of that leaking in if you have universal earbuds to where you just don't need that much. We also have an ambient mic, and I can take and add some of that in, and that helps too. But overall, I'll adjust that room level to where it doesn't sound like it's, there's some weird phasing issues, It might be the wrong term. So here's what it sounds like, and we'll go back to the amp. And in my in-ears, I tend to dial in more gain or I'm sorry, when I'm dialing it in on my wedge over here, I tend to dial more gain, and then when I come in my in-ears, it's just way too much. Plus it's right there on me, right? So it can be a little much where I think I need more gain. And a lot of this stuff is based on feel, not just how it sounds, but I try to think how it feels as well. And so there's that balance between not piercing the audience and then having something that fits well in my in-ears. I've got a fairly low gain on this HB, this V1, and that V1 is if you read in the amplifier list on Wiki, it was basically Mark Day's one of his B100s, and those are different voice switches. They got V1 and V2, so that's what this represents. So we're on the Harrier model. So depending on the system that you're using, you may have to come in here and adjust these, but this will give you a baseline of what I like to do. And actually the master volume, I'll play with that a little bit, and that helps on the feel as well. I might have to level my patch a little bit, come back in here and kind of drop this down. But I'm not sure if you know about leveling, how I level it. I'll come to the output and I'll play something. Kind of the heaviest thing I'm going to play that may overdrive things. Right, and I try to give myself a little bit of room, because when I go to a boost, which I'll hit my FC6 over here, if I go to the boost, and so that boost kind of hits closer to that 0 dB here. And if it's running too hot, I'll go back over to the amp and I'll adjust the level over here to level things out. And I do that for all my scenes to make sure that everything is leveled just fine. And you got to be careful, because these effects as well, they also have levels. So be careful when if something sounds crazy and you're like, everything looks the same on the amp. Check some of your effects levels and see if they didn't get bumped, crazy. Some of these things I rarely use. I've got a chorus in here. I don't use it that often. Multi-delay, it depends on how I feel, but typically it's real simple with a delay. In this case, I've got, so that's basically for scene one, like I said. So scene one has a little bit of room in here, so a little bit of reverb, a little studio. Scene one is really simple. Amp, cab, a little bit of studio reverb with the settings here. So scene two is my clean sound. And this is a Les Paul, so it's always going out of tune. Give the slight nastiness. And what you can see here is I've got a Jazz 120. I didn't want to do that. I've got a studio compressor, and you can look at the setting. Good amount of compression. On the amp, if you want to have a little bit of breakup, obviously you can add this in here, a little more input drive. Just watch your overall output gain. So you'd have to come back and adjust, take your level down a little bit. But if you want to add a little bit of grit there, you could do that. You can also take it back down here. Let's take it back. I think it was at 3.81, whatever. And you could also kick the drive in, which is a super overdrive. I probably wouldn't do that. A little out of tune. A little more of a tamer sound would be your TS-808, your tube screamer. You could also swap this out if you want a little bit of an edgier tone, no pun intended. You can get your Vox style stuff, the Morgan, the Matchbox, those kind of amps. But I stuck with the JC120. The cab here is a boutique model, the 212 with the 121. It just sounded okay. I probably could go with something else. The 121 may not be the right one, but I go by my ear a lot. So I've got inside the delay, what I've done is set the delay just a little bit different. So I've got two, actually scene 3 is going to have a different stereo tape, and then I'll explain what I do with those. So there's I've got a stereo tape delay, and I've got it for a tap tempo on the FC6, and I've got an expression pedal hooked up to it that will adjust the mix to be a little bit just a little stronger. A little bit of reverb here, a little studio, same reverb. You can't really hear it that much because it's really for the in-ears. So for scene 3, I call this my rhythm delay. It's, you know, basically when I want my normal sound, but yet I want to add a little more ambiance to it, I'll add the delay. And again, my expression pedal, if you look over at the mix section, is adjusting. If you look here, I'll show you how I've got it set. It's for FC1. What they do is you can have a bunch of FC foot switches. And so this is my one switch. If I had 2 switches or 3 and link them together, I would pick FC2, FC3, and so on. So you can pick here, pick this FC1, FC2, FC3, FC4, right? But I've got it for FC pedal 3, so that expression pedal is plugged into that. And if you look, I've got the minimum set to 10, max to 31.7. So if I get out of here, you'll see it lift up and right there. Okay. And here's how it sounds. Let that expression up. That's kind of terrible. I'm at an awkward angle. The multi-delay is a quad tape delay. You can kind of go between the two and see which one you like better. And generally that's what I was doing between for the next scene, which is my lead scene. Lead scene's a little different. I've got the drive turns on, which the drive is a super overdrive, set for the standard, just a little bit more bite here, max level. And you can do that you can do that for the rhythm channel too if you want to tighten things up. It's just a little much for me and tends to make things sound stale. There's other drives that maybe are a little more transparent. Super overdrive just tends to be it's a little much. So, but if you look on here, I've got, so things will cut through a little bit. 2K, I've just increased this 1 dB. You can go more if you want to get more of that honky mid-range that pushes through. So it adds a nice little effect to it. I've also, since this is my lead boost, I popped up the level about 2 dB. And then over on my delay, what I've done is I've shared this same stereo tape that I have was what I was using with the clean. And I've got this delay also set for my tap tempo on the FC6. And you can look up top here, you see it's changing. And again, for the in-ears, just a little bit. With all that delay, I probably don't need it. So you can remove that, but you probably won't even notice it. Again, your mileage may vary here, depending on what you're putting through it and the PA you're running it through. Just keep an open mind there and adjust accordingly. So the last thing I want to do is I just want to show you the FC6, how I've got it programmed. I'll show you first on the screen, and then we'll kind of go over to the foot pedal itself. I'm going to go over here to the layout 1, which is actually layout 2, which is my scenes. And what I have here is, and I'll show you how it works on the pedal as well. I've got a tap tempo over here under utility. You can find utility and then you can click tap tempo. And then there's plenty of tutorials out there on the FC6, so I'm just going to show you what I'm using it here. And then I've got the hold function goes to my tuner. What I'd like to figure out, though, would be nice to just tap it, because right now I have to hold it again, and that's kind of frustrating. And what I do here is I go to this next one here. If I want to go and I want to have a kind of instant access mode, I set this to effects. And what you can do is once you tap this here, you can go, since that's in a layout, you'll click layout, select, and then layout 3, which if you look up top here, my layout 3 is effects. So when I go to effects, I can turn off and on my most used effects, which I don't use that much, so this works well for me. And then I go back to scenes quite often, so I'll click scenes. I have scenes on the top right, so I can go right back to my scenes here. So the last thing I want to show you before we end this is the FC6 itself and how it looks when I'm switching it. All right, so I had to lower down the exposure quite a bit just so I could see the little labels. Brett Kingman, whatever he's doing with his video, it's great. You can see his foot pedals and everything. So, earlier we talked about the scenes, but I've got rhythm 1 for the scene 1, and then it goes to clean, which is the second scene. Third scene is rhythm delay, and then lead here. And here's we've got tap tempo, so I can just tap it right here. Right, we talked about that. And this is probably the thing that matters to me most is, if I want to, when I'm playing, I can come in here and just click over here to the other layout, the effect 1 layout, and it'll give me, what I need on here. If I had more effects that I wanted to bypass, then I probably need to think this out more, because you can put a button to scroll over to another effect layout here. And but I think that the FC6 is plenty. I really don't see a need to have a 12 right now for my layouts or my presets are really simple. So now I can just go back to scenes, and I don't have to do a lot of tap dancing. Just that's probably the most I'll have to do, and flip the effects on and off and stuff. So. Well, this went longer than expected. I think I wanted to do a 10-minute video, so I'm sorry this went way too long. But that's why they have that fast forward button. But don't fast forward through everything. So thanks again for watching. I'd love it if you would subscribe. That'll help. That helps keep me motivated and for doing more of these videos. So I really enjoy it so far, and thanks again for watching. Have a good week.